guys, this is Stephanie and I am Stacks on Stacks on Stacks. So you guys asked if we are going to be delivering a review on Zenith by Sasha Alsberg and Lindsay Cummings. Now, I talked about this book when I read it in the month of April. Well, I talked about it in May. I read it in April, and you read it in May?
I think I read it in May. I believe I did.
And I didn't love this book. If you watch my April wrap-up, you'll see how I feel about it. I didn't go into a lot of detail, but I had a lot of problems with this book. This book was very, very problematic. So Mark, after I was complaining to him for the, 4 or 5 days it took me to read this thing,
yeah,
he was intrigued, and he was like, I want to read this. Now, why do you choose to read the books that I'm like, I don't like this book?
Because I want to know, it's just as interesting to get to know a person, and I like to get to know Stephanie as my wife of 14 years. I want to get to know, it's almost as important, if not more, why you dislike things. Not just, the things you like, that's pretty easy, and especially if I agree with them, I'm like, great. But if you don't like something, and your partner does, it's good to find out why. Where's the difference there? Where's their mind working? What did they see? And I like it a lot because I can see things usually from a different point of view. If I do like something or don't like it, and she's the other way, helps me look at things more completely, I think. So I like, especially when she says she doesn't like a book. I'm like, I want to see why she didn't like it.
I will say, I feel like sometimes I say, I really like this book.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, tell me about it. I'm like, you're not going to read it? You're like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, I don't like contemporaries.
It's true. Yeah. And I am surprised. I think my example was Eleanor Oliphant.
Oh, yeah.
I liked it. I really liked it. And I thought he might like it.
And it sounds like one I'll never read.
You probably won't. But it's good. It's better than this.
Sure. It's not sci-fi. And this is sci-fi.
This is sci-fi.
And I like sci-fi a lot.
This is YA sci-fi. There's not a lot of YA sci-fi out there. It's not like...
Cinder.
Yep, Cinder.
That's like fantasy sci-fi.
Mm-hmm. There's These Broken Stars. Those pretty books.
Those are the prettiest books she owns. They're so good.
Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
I've never read them. And then there's another series, I think, called Across the Universe, which really sucked. I read the first book. And that one takes place. And those are like YA. But YA sci-fi is not really a thing. It could be. But this was not a good example, in my opinion. This was an example of YA.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to put this down. I don't want to hold it and it keeps glaring. So there we go. Right next to the candle.
It smells good.
It does. Mark picked it out. Today's candle is Princess Sierra. This is a bookie box.
It smelled
candle.
like sugar cookie or something.
Can you
That's
smell it?
why I picked
Does
it.
it smell good?
I'm a fat guy and I like sugar, so.
It does smell good. It does smell very sugary.
It does have glitter in it though, and I'm not all about that.
But this is the safe glitter that when you sniff it, it doesn't go up your nose.
Herpes of the craft world.
Not that that's happened.
Okay.
We're going to start out with just telling you what the book is about, and then we're going to go into spoilers. So basically, this is a book that takes place in outer space, and the way it was pitched to me, these girls are like space pirates. Like, they are 4 girls who are on a ship, and they do bounties and things like that, and drive around the outer space, and that's it. And that they get into some shenanigans, and they end up having to help out an old friend. That is what was pitched to me. It's not completely off, but getting to know these 4 characters, I would hardly call them space pirates.
Well, I mean, I would. I'd call them space pirates.
I would call them space dingbats. Like,
we'll get into that. We'll get into that.
Okay, so there's your non-spoiling. Everything from here out, we're going to be spoiling. So if you don't want to be spoiled, stop watching now. If you think you're going to read this book, and if you want to, whatever. Spoilers. I gave this like about a 2.5. It was mediocre. What did you give it, by the way?
What out of what? I don't know.
Out of 5 stars.
Oh, out of 5 stars, and I can do points?
Sure. You can do what you want. It's my channel.
It's tough to say, because especially if something's set up to be part of a series, not just a single individual book.
No.
If it's not a standalone, so if it was just a standalone, I would probably give it a 2. But as part of a series, I'd probably give it like a 2.8.
I'm giving it a 2.5 because I'm not going to continue the series.
And I might, just to give it a shot.
Well, you let me know.
I'm going to say, I don't watch a lot of BookTube. I watch some people. My favorite channel is Stacks on Stacks on Stacks. And then Brews and Reviews. And then I like
Solid.
Right, and then I like a few others. Okay, even some big ones though. Big booktubers I watch. I'm like, I don't enjoy them as much. They're great. I see why people like them, but I don't like them as much. And so when I was told, because I don't know about booktuber anything, that one of them, and even now looking at the title, I don't know which of those two, Sasha Alsberg or Lindsay Cummings, is the booktuber. I have no idea. And I don't care, because I'm reading a book and it had better be good and entertain me and be good writing. So that's why I wanted to read it too, because I don't have a horse in that race, and I'll tell you what I think just objectively.
Sasha is the booktuber.
Oh, okay.
And Lindsay is an author. I've read 2 of her books before, and I liked those books. I wouldn't say I loved those books, but I liked those books. Okay. And I do follow her on BookTube, maybe Instagram, and I like her as a person. Lindsay, I think she's a really cool person, so I'm like, I really like her. I wanted to like this book a lot more than I did. The writing was very amateur and everything like that. We'll get to that. We're gonna start with characters.
First character is Androma Rosella, and everybody calls her Andy, or the Bloody Baroness is her moniker, I guess. And she's the captain of the ship, of the pirate ship. And then Lyra...
The glass pirate ship.
The glass pirate ship.
We'll get into that
and
too.
And then Lyra is her second in command, I think, and she's the pilot as well.
Yeah.
And then Breck, I think, is the big strong one that has Grace blue skin or scales or something.
Yeah.
And then Gilly is a little 13-year-old, which doesn't make sense because she was talking about one of the missions they were on 5 years ago. Whatever. I was like, you had an 8-year-old? And she was competent to do all these things, like no big deal. So the ages of all of these, by the way, they're all teenagers. It's YA.
That's YA.
I expect that. But as you have brought up in other ones that I don't care for as much, that I feel they could... Kaz Brecker acts way older than he does. But it's still an excellent series if you ever read... I want to read the Grisha
Just in my mind.
trilogy. Yeah, no.
Six of Crows. They're like in their late 20s.
Yeah.
Early 30s.
Absolutely. But they show plenty of that... I'm a dumb noob teenage girl-ishness sometimes, I guess. But pretty much no. They act like they're, members of a space pirate ship in their 20s. So then we have and Gilly's just a little warrior.
She's a shooter.
She's not described very well. But we'll get to that. And then Dex is an ex-pirate.
Andy's ex-boyfriend, and he owned the ship and she stole it.
But he's sort of a mercenary.
Kind of.
Anyway. And then Valen Cortas, he's the brother of a princess that Andy used to bodyguard, basically.
Yes.
And then there's other characters. There's like an evil queen.
Whose name we couldn't remember.
There's a general. There's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of little ones. It actually goes through a few different viewpoints, and I did like that. I thought that was done well.
I didn't mind it, but I did think it slowed up the pacing quite a bit.
So we'll say, and I think we both agree on this. We haven't talked much about this. We specifically have saved this for you guys. All of these characters, they're not very well written. I feel the failing of the characters is in the writing, the lack of skilled writing. I don't think it's a bad idea to have some of these characters, but every single one of them felt very tropey. Every single one. Maybe you said this. Okay, didn't like the fact that it's the Bloody Baroness.
I didn't like that.
Maybe it was you.
It was super close to the Bloody Baron in Harry Potter.
All of Harry Potter, yeah.
And that irritated me because I felt like it was just, they wanted the alliteration, so they stole it. And I didn't like that. And besides the fact that she's the Bloody Baroness, so she kills all these people, and she feels really bad about it. Not bad enough to not blow up a ship with 800 people, but she feels really bad about it. Or to
shoot other people who are definitively, you find out they're good guys. They're like security guys, like police and things like that. She kills them. She blows them up with reckless abandon.
Yes.
The character development is very, very uneven.
Well,
she sets her up to be like, well, she's got this hard exterior, but then every night, like she puts the tallies on her swords or something. She has twin swords, I guess, and she puts tallies on her swords. I remember that on her laser swords. I don't remember. Anyway, and then she cries each night, and she dances with every single one because she remembers all the ones she. And here's the thing: if I was a 13-year-old or 14-year-old reading this, I wouldn't mind it because the writing's not. I'm not going to say it's very bad because here's what I think. I'm going to jump to this right now. I think there wasn't enough editing done for this book.
I agree.
And I can see places where I don't know this, I think it was one person writing and maybe not the other more experienced writer, but I could be wrong about that.
It could have been a lot.
But here's the thing. That could have been a melding issue, an editing issue. Maybe they mixed some stuff in there. We don't know that. We don't know that process, so I'm not going to make that assumption. Say, oh, this part was clearly Sasha just being a dumb new writer. Sasha, if you ever, there's no way she'll watch this. If you ever watch this, keep at it, because I'm telling you right now, one of my favorite books of all time was The Host by Stephanie Meyer, who wrote Twilight. Who, if you go back and you read those, the writing was so bad. Writing. It was so bad. It's terrible writing. But people, got into them for their different reasons, and they just trudged on through. But then she ended up writing this amazing sci-fi book that I love. I think it's great writing. It's awesome. So I think that the story, like the idea for this, and she starts off, because I listened to the audiobook, she starts off saying these things, that she had ideas for these characters and for this plot. I think it's actually a really great idea. And there's people who, if you don't have good discernment about good writing, you could really actually love this book. You would love it because you don't care if the writing's good or not.
You'd be willing to look past a lot of the issues that we have with it, too. So those were the bare bones of our characters.
Yep.
They did a lot of, heavy description on the characters that never comes to any fruition. It never matters. She has these metal implants for cheekbones, and I thought, okay, so a shield will come out of them, or at some point she's going to get shot on the face and she's going to deflect it with her metal implants or something.
Something. It's got to be used for something.
So they mention it every time they talk about her, but it never matters. And again, that's going to come down to ultimately the writing. I feel like the plot was there. It was shaky and questionable, but it was there. It's just, I didn't feel like the plot was driving. I didn't feel like anything was driving this book.
It wasn't edited.
The characters didn't drive it. The plot didn't drive it. No. I didn't have interest in it. I literally finished it because I thought, it's got to get better. I need to stop thinking that about books. Did not like this one. But I will agree, it comes down to the writing, the editing, and the writing. I feel like if it would have gone through maybe a year and a half more edits, probably would have been good.
So I'm going to use just some examples from this. From right away in the first chapter, it's talking about things with the ship and with the crew. So they're all there. Lyra, Breck, Gilly, Andy, all of them. And it's already said, the Bloody Baroness. Which, I have to point this out. I think they just used that for alliteration. But they could have used something else that wasn't near Bloody Baron. But I don't mind that. If she was actually... I wouldn't mind it. If she was an actual, spoiled rich kid who would have been a baroness or something. No, then
I think it would have been more okay. It would have made more sense.
It would have made more sense. It literally... It's not literally. It's figuratively.
The Deadly Duchess would have been better.
I said that. I said the Deadly Duchess.
I was
or something. You could have said anything to have the alliteration of some crazy
but
thing
it wasn't,
that.
And it didn't suit, though. The fact that she likes to kill people, but she feels bad, but she likes it. I was like, there's no conflict. This is not good writing.
Right. So, anytime that they do a description of people, they'll say, Gilly nodded, like the little warrior she is. I don't know what kind of little warrior she is. And what do you mean nodded like a... So
how do you nod like a warrior? Okay.
I have no clue. I don't know what that means. But even with that, the things that they say in this book, adherence, Breck said with a sigh, crossing her thick arms over her chest. Okay, she's strong. So I get that. That's fine. At 7 feet tall. Okay, she's crazy tall and big and strong. With choppy black hair that just brushed her muscled shoulders. So it's, I guess... Breck was the most intimidating member of the crew. Thanks for telling us that specifically instead of letting us figure out that she's a 7-foot muscled destroyer. I'm sure I would get that. They all assumed she was a giantess from the planet New Veda, of course. Where Mirabelle's greatest warriors were born.
Yeah, I use that.
And then I'm just going to skip over some words on this one page. So we have all the characters, of course, Mirabelle, Nuveda, Adherens, of course, Zenpaterin, Zenpaterin, and the home planet of Umbin. And and Tellersen something, spent a little too much on hair products on TZ5. Okay, so here's our problem with that. Oh, I'm messing up the dust jacket on this masterpiece. Here's the problem. It's a very pretty book, by the way. I do like.
I'm hoping I can get a few dollars from the bookstore.
Yeah. Here's the problem with that. I've read a lot of very good and some bad sci-fi and fantasy. And what you don't want to do with sci-fi or high fantasy especially is dive people into this thing to where they're like, I have no idea the world that you've just thrown me in. I don't understand what you're talking about. I don't understand these terms that you're using. But if you come back to use them, those specific things that are made up, that they're part of high fantasy. Sci-fi is the same way, and it can be tricky. It's fine to reference systems. So if a ship is made of this wonderful indestructible glass, but glass so the whole ship is see-through?
How about the bathrooms? Those see-through?
No, but
everybody can see you take your morning deuce?
Yeah, or they'll have other times when they're like, they looked down and they could see the person on the other deck or something like that.
Does that mean you can look up and see their butt, their squishy butt in a chair that's also glass? Like, how awkward and unreasonable. And then does it look like people are just flying through space, like, individually?
But the whole thing, I don't think, is made of glass. Like, not their chairs and not the consoles, but maybe it is.
But they don't say that.
But it also doesn't make any sense why it is or what that would mean. But that's fine. That's fine. Whatever. The problem with that writing, though, is that was just one page. And there's even more of that to where they do these one-off just throws like the Umbello system and the Tarjons or whatever. And I don't know about those. And if you come back to tell me about them or you're like, oh, Tarjons, I'm like, oh, I remember. They were speaking poorly of them as if they didn't have morals or loose morals.
But they never come up again.
And then, these Tarjons, because they've got loose morals. I remember this. Okay.
They throw that stuff out. It never comes up again.
Never comes up. Or if it does, I didn't remember it. You didn't make it memorable. Or the system that we were in or how it worked. And if you had more editing with a lot more people. So using Brandon Sanderson as an example. And yes, he's a seasoned writer and it's cheating. But I tell you.
He takes years to put out books too. Because he goes through multiple edits.
Tons of people, though, read them. He has so many people listen to and read and then give feedback and give notes.
Which is important because that's how you catch, like, oh, your characters suck.
I didn't understand this.
Why is the ship glass?
Oh, you wouldn't understand that or you wouldn't know. Or, wait, that doesn't come into play anywhere. Why am I throwing that out there? I need to use a different adjective here. Like, all those things you can catch in those many, many cycles of edits. And that just didn't happen with this. Mm-hmm. So, as an example, Warbreaker. I mean, we'll go to the first chapter.
I really liked this book.
There were great advantages to being unimportant. Okay, now we don't know if unimportant, this is fantasy, we know that. True by many people's standards, Ciri wasn't unimportant. She was, after all, the daughter of a king. We know what a king is, right? We know what a daughter, like the concepts we're using are real world concepts. Fortunately, her father had 4 living children, and Ciri, at 17 years of age, was the youngest. So with just that, I have the feeling of she's the youngest kid. There are 4 of them. She's 17. So all the other ones are, but like simple little.
Makes me want to keep reading the book.
I know, right? I'm like, whoa. Talks about them. Okay, it's Fafin and Ridger and these other ones. And then, okay, Vivenna. Okay, so just like Zenith has the characters and it's getting some going, but it's actually just giving backstory on, we're just talking about one character right now. Instead of throwing us in and being like, here's all these 4 characters, and this one, like a warrior, and she smiled, and this one crossed her big arms, and this one, the best pilot, of course, ever. Like, you want to discover these things. Like, I didn't know that Han Solo, in a movie, I know it's not a book, was a roguish, whatever. I saw him be that way. I saw him be charming. I saw him smirk. I saw him outmaneuver Imperial ships. I want to witness that in a book. Oh, yep, there he is. I want to witness that in a book, and it doesn't happen in Zenith. And then there's like 2, 3, 4 pages before there's even a word about, I'm like, oh, a grand city or the terrible Hallandren. Hallandren, what's that? I don't understand that. Well, guess what? If you've read this book, you find out what it is. It doesn't.
Well, they tell you, like on the next page, actually. They tell you pretty early on that one. But I will say Sanderson generally starts his books with a first chapter. It's kind of like
it does
he's throwing you into the middle of the water, and you got to be like, what is this? But it's always the only one chapter. And you
understand the basics of what's going on.
Yes, you understand the basics of it. And then as the book goes on, you're like, that's the guy. That's the one. Like, it's
he had breath? That's what breath is, and so it would matter if he did that.
So it does add up, whereas there were definitely things in Zenith that were mentioned or talked about, kind of like Sanderson does, like this throwaway paragraph of this heavy description thing, but it literally never comes back in. So
never comes back up. So
that's some of my biggest problems that I had with it was the bad editing, the bad writing. Mark is right. You will get there in time. Your writing hopefully will improve, but it just was not a great book, and I'm not willing to continue on the series.
The story, the idea for the story, I think is pretty good. There's a lot of very tropey things in here, like very expected. But I haven't read a lot of YA, honestly. I've read just whatever Stephanie's got me to do. And so some of the stuff I'm like, oh, that was interesting, or I thought this was fun. She's like, well, I was expecting that because that happens in every YA novel. I didn't know that. So it depends on your perspective as well. But again, I think if you're a younger reader, that you're just like, I'm just reading these words to get the story that I want to listen to the story. I think it's pretty good. Like the story itself, it could be good. There's a lot of things though in there like that, especially if you're a younger reader. I think they have a rape scene or the non-consensual sex thing go on. I could be remembering wrong, but I remember that I didn't like that. And I didn't feel it was necessary
I felt like it was an odd scene that didn't need to be there.
The level of violence that they display, the main character is not likable.
She's not.
Andy's not likable because...
Actually, I don't think any of the characters are likable. Even Dax, who's like
Dex,
who's like your...
roguish, whatever.
Ex-boyfriend.
I don't think
usually girls like the bad boy. He wasn't likable either. Literally, none of the characters are likable.
He's sort of a good boy. Or they're likable, but it's because they're pretty shallow and we don't know much about them. Like Alfie, the robot butler.
Yes, we liked the robot.
He's likable, but we don't know much about him except for one or two things that he did. To sum it all up, I think I would agree with that the lack of good edits or editing, or they need more editing. So if they were to ever hear this, have a lot more people edit and say, this did not make sense, or... you just threw so many things out that I didn't understand. Overall, that's why I would rate it that way, because while the plot is interesting in theory, the writing of it was not good, and the characters I thought were not written well again, so I didn't like them. They weren't likable. But especially the main one that I think you're supposed to root for, Andy, I really did not like at all. Her level of violence towards people that are good or don't deserve it, and how she's ruthless and perfect, this killer. Like, well, how did you get quite that way, first of all? You're not
and you get the
superpowered.
background of how she got where she is.
But that
and it is not justified.
It's not justified.
It's not justified.
It's not. It sucks that this thing happened and you were irresponsible, but you were a dumb teenage girl trying to go out on a joyride with your friend. Yeah. Like, that's a thing that could happen. I was fine with that. But then
her reaction to what happened.
Their reaction to her. I was like, that
didn't
make sense.
It should have been, she should have done a worse thing.
Yeah, I agree.
This level of,
they set it up worse.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's a lot more that we could get into it with it, I'm sure, but we don't remember enough about it because it wasn't memorable. Because there were so many throwaway things. I'm telling you, that's the main thing. If you can push through and be like, I'm just going to pay attention to the story, and I can plow through a book and just listen to the story. The story is decent. Like, the idea for it is decent. And so that's why I would give it a slightly higher rating than Stephanie.
So please feel free to leave what you thought about the book down below. We would love to hear your thoughts and your comments on it. If you liked it, tell me why you liked it. And if you had different reasons for why you didn't like it, or you agree with ours, whatever, please comment down below. I would like to get more feedback about this book. I think I've talked to one person in real life outside of Mark that has read this book. So it's not popular in Nebraska, though I guess it's popular everywhere else because it was on the New York Times bestseller list, because that's on the front of the book.
Best-selling doesn't mean it was good, people. But as I said, I didn't think it was as horrible as... Apparently, again, I don't watch booktube stuff. A lot of people are like, oh, terrible. Maybe they're expecting a lot. I wasn't, and I was like, it's not very good. It's not horrible.
Okay.
It's no November 9. Don't forget to like.
And don't forget to subscribe. I post videos on Tuesdays and Fridays, so you can always find me here then. So feel free to check me out then. Thanks so much. Talk to you guys later. Goodbye. Bye. Okay.
Hello, Temperance.
Hi, Temper Pants. Did you come here to flop your ears?
Hi, sweetie.
Hi. Why the wag?
She's wagging because she loves the people. Here.
She loves people. She's such an awkward dog.
Say hi to all the people.
Let's have a temperance sandwich.
Tempe sandwich.
A Tempe sandwich.
She just does not like looking at the camera, huh?
She lacks some essential people skills, this one.
Yes. She could be a good therapy dog. She's very sweet.